The evidence against you is substantial. How do you respond to the allegations presented here today?
The room was cold, not the kind of cold that comes from air conditioning. No, this was the kind of cold that crawls into your bones when you know your whole life is about to fall apart. Zora Williams sat in a hard wooden chair in the middle of a long conference room on the third floor of Crestwood University School of Law. Her hands were folded on the table in front of her. They were trembling. She pressed them together harder, trying to make them stop. They wouldn't. Across the table sat 5 faculty members, 5 faces made of stone, 5 pairs of eyes that looked at her like she was something dirty stuck to the bottom of their shoes. Dean Patricia Caldwell sat in the center. Silver hair, reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose, a manila folder open in front of her. She cleared her throat and the sound echoed through the room like a gavel. "Miss Williams," Dean Caldwell began, her voice flat and sharp at the same time. "You are here today to address formal charges of academic dishonesty. Specifically, repeated cheating across multiple examinations during your enrollment at Crestwood University School of Law." Zora's stomach dropped, even though she had already read the letter. Even though she had already cried herself empty 3 nights in a row. Hearing the words out loud in this room in front of these people, it hit different. It hit like a freight train. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Her throat closed up like someone had wrapped a fist around it. Her eyes burned. She blinked fast. She would not cry, not here, not in front of them. She swallowed hard and tried again. I didn't," her voice cracked, broke clean in half. And the silence that followed was the loudest thing she had ever heard. Professor Leonard Hayes sat at the far end of the table. He was the one who hurt the most to look at. This man had once told her she was the brightest student he had seen in 30 years of teaching. Now he wouldn't even meet her eyes. He stared down at the papers in front of him like they were the most interesting thing in the world. And just outside the conference room door, sitting on a bench in the hallway with her legs crossed and her designer bag resting perfectly on her lap, was Monica Price. Zora couldn't see her from inside the room. But if she could have, she would have noticed something that would have made her blood run cold. Monica was smiling. Not a big smile. Not a grin. Just the tiniest curl at the corner of her lips. The kind of smile that a person wears when a plan comes together exactly the way they designed it. But how did Zora Williams end up here? How did the smartest girl in the entire law school end up sitting in a disciplinary hearing, accused of being a fraud? How did the girl who studied harder than anybody, who sacrificed more than anybody, who earned every single grade with her own sweat and tears, how did she become the villain of her own story? To understand that, we need to go back. Way back. Back to a tiny apartment on the south side of Chicago, where a mother's love and a daughter's impossible dreams started a journey that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, this story is going to hit different. Make sure you subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because you do not want to miss a single second of what happens next. Trust me on that. Now let's begin. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that was barely big enough for one person to stand in. The wallpaper was peeling in the hallway. The faucet in the bathroom dripped all night long, every single night, like a clock counting down to something that never came. But Denise Williams kept that apartment spotless. She scrubbed those floors on her hands and knees every Saturday morning. She hung fresh curtains she bought from the dollar store. She kept a little glass vase on the kitchen table with fake flowers in it because real flowers cost too much. This was home. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Denise worked 2 jobs. During the day, she cleaned rooms at the Marriott on Michigan Avenue. At night, 3 times a week, she picked up shifts at a laundromat on 63rd Street. Her hands were rough, dry, cracked in the winter. She rubbed lotion on them every night before bed, but by morning, they were rough again. She never complained. Not once. Not ever. Because everything Denise did, every floor she mopped, every toilet she scrubbed, every sheet she folded, every hour of sleep she gave up was for one reason and one reason only. Zora. Zora was Denise's only child. Her miracle baby, she called her. Born 3 weeks early, 5 pounds and 2 ounces, screaming loud enough to shake the walls of the delivery room. The doctor had said there might be complications. Denise had prayed so hard that her lips were chapped by the time the baby came. But Zora arrived healthy, strong, loud, and smart. Lord, that child was smart. Denise noticed it early. By the time Zora was 3, she was reading words off cereal boxes. By 5, she was sounding out sentences in the newspaper Denise brought home from the hotel lobby. By 7, she was reading full chapter books while the other kids were still fighting over crayons. Her teachers noticed too. "Williams," her second-grade teacher said during a parent-teacher conference, "your daughter is exceptional. She's reading at a 6th-grade level. She has a gift." Denise smiled so wide her face hurt. She held that sentence in her heart like a jewel. Exceptional. Her baby was exceptional, but not everyone in Zora's life saw her that way. Raymond Williams, Zora's father, saw her as a burden. Raymond was a smooth talker with a handsome face and empty pockets. He married Denise when she was 19 and he was 22. He promised her the world. Then he gave her nothing but headaches, broken promises, and one beautiful daughter he didn't have the spine to raise. He left when Zora was 6, didn't leave a note, didn't say goodbye to his child, just packed a duffel bag one Tuesday morning while Zora was at school and Denise was at work, and disappeared like smoke. Zora came home that afternoon and asked, "Mama, where's Daddy's jacket?" "The blue one that hangs by the door." Denise looked at the empty hook by the door, looked at the half-empty closet, looked at the space where his shoes used to be, and she knew. She knelt down, took Zora's little face in her rough hands and said, "Baby, it's just me and you now, but I promise you something. I promise you on my life, on everything I got, that I will give you a future worth having. You hear me? You are going to be something great. And nobody, not your daddy, not this neighborhood, not this broke-down apartment, nobody is going to stop you." Zora didn't fully understand those words at 6 years old, but she felt them. She felt the weight of them. She felt the fire in her mama's voice, and something clicked inside her little heart that day. She was going to make her mama proud. From that day forward, Zora became a machine. She studied like her life depended on it, because in a way it did. While other kids on her block were playing double dutch after school, Zora was sitting at the kitchen table with her textbook spread out in front of her, doing math problems over and over until she got every single one right. Denise watched her daughter work and felt two things at the same time: pride that swelled up in her chest like a balloon, and a deep, aching sadness that a child this young already understood that the only way out was through a book. But Zora wasn't sad. She was focused. Middle school. Straight A's every single semester. She won the spelling bee in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Her science fair project in 7th grade, something about water filtration, way beyond what any 12-year-old should have been doing, took first place in the citywide competition. The principal called Denise to say, "Your daughter is going to do big things." Denise already knew. High school. Same story, but louder. Zora joined the debate team and demolished everybody. She had this way of arguing, calm, precise, with logic so tight you couldn't find a crack in it if you tried. Her debate coach, Mr. Franklin, said she argued like a lawyer. A lawyer. That word stuck to Zora like honey. She started reading about civil rights lawyers. Thurgood Marshall. Constance Baker Motley. Charles Hamilton Houston. She read about people who used the law like a weapon, not to hurt, but to protect, to defend. To change the rules of a game that was rigged against people who looked like her. "Mama," Zora said one evening, sitting at the kitchen table with a library book open in front of her, "I'm going to be a lawyer." Denise looked up from the pot of beans she was stirring on the stove. Her eyes were tired. She had just come off a double shift, but they lit up like someone flipped a switch. "A lawyer," Denise repeated. "Civil rights lawyer," Zora said. "I'm going to help people who can't help themselves." Denise set down the wooden spoon. She walked over to the table. She placed both her rough, cracked hands on Zora's cheeks and kissed her forehead. "Then you do it, baby," Denise whispered. "You do it and you don't let nothing stop you." That was the deal. That was the pact. Spoken over a pot of beans in a tiny kitchen in a breaking-down apartment on the south side of Chicago. Zora Williams was going to become a lawyer. And Denise Williams was going to work until her body gave out to make it happen. Fast forward to senior year of high school. Zora had the highest GPA in her graduating class. She was valedictorian. She had spent 4 years being the girl who sat in the front row, the girl who stayed late in the library, the girl who didn't go to prom because she was studying for the AP government exam the following Monday. She didn't have a lot of friends. That was the truth. Not because she was mean, not because she was stuck up. She was just focused, locked in. She didn't know how to do small talk. She didn't know how to relax. Every hour that wasn't spent studying felt like an hour wasted. Some classmates respected her. Some resented her. Most didn't know her at all. Zora was okay with that. She had her mama. She had her books. She had her dream. That was enough. But then the letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in April. Zora checked the mailbox on her way in from school, flipping through the usual stuff: bills, a pizza coupon, a flyer for some church event. And then she saw it. A thick envelope, cream-colored, heavy, with a gold-embossed seal in the upper left corner: Crestwood University School of Law, Atlanta, Georgia. Zora's heart stopped. She stood right there in the lobby of her apartment building, cracked tile floor, flickering fluorescent light buzzing above her head, and tore that envelope open with shaking fingers. She read the first line: "Dear Miss Williams, it is our distinct pleasure to inform you." She kept reading. Full academic scholarship. Tuition, housing, and books covered. Based on your exceptional academic record and demonstrated commitment to justice. Zora read it again. And again. And one more time because her brain couldn't believe what her eyes were telling it. Full ride. Everything paid for. Every single penny. She ran up 4 flights of stairs. She didn't wait for the elevator because the elevator in her building hadn't worked in 3 years anyway. She burst through the apartment door so hard it slammed against the wall. "Mama," she screamed. Denise came rushing out of the bedroom, still in her hotel uniform, her shower cap half on her head. What happened? Are you okay? Who's hurt?" Zora held up the letter. She couldn't even talk. Tears were streaming down her face. She just held it up and shoved it toward Denise's face. Denise took the letter, put on her reading glasses, read it once. Slowly. Then she read it again. Then Denise Williams, the woman who had never once complained, who had never once cried in front of her daughter, who had carried every burden on her back in silence for 18 years, fell to her knees right there in the hallway of that tiny apartment and sobbed. Not a quiet cry, not a polite cry. A deep, body-shaking, gut-wrenching sob that came from somewhere so deep inside her that Zora didn't even know that place existed. "Thank you, Jesus," Denise whispered through her tears. "Thank you, thank you." "Thank you." Zora dropped to the floor and wrapped her arms around her mother. They sat there on that old carpet, holding each other, crying, laughing, rocking back and forth. The fake flowers on the kitchen table watched them from a distance. The faucet dripped. The world outside kept spinning. But inside that apartment, time had stopped. The dream was real. 3 months later, Zora stood in front of the main entrance of Crestwood University School of Law in Atlanta, Georgia. She had 2 suitcases, both second-hand. One had a busted zipper that she held shut with a hair tie. She wore a plain white t-shirt, jeans, and clean white sneakers that Denise had bought her from the outlet mall as a going-away gift. Zora looked up at the building. It was massive, red brick, tall white columns, perfectly trimmed hedges lining the walkway. A bronze statue of the school's founder stood in the courtyard. Students walked past in clusters, laughing, talking, carrying bags that cost more than Zora's rent back in Chicago. She noticed the cars in the parking lot: Mercedes, BMWs, a white Range Rover with tinted windows. She looked at her 2 busted suitcases and felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This was a different world. A world of money, connections, and last names that meant something. Zora didn't have any of that. She had a scholarship, a brain full of knowledge, and a promise she made to her mama in a tiny kitchen over a pot of beans. She whispered under her breath, "You belong here, girl. You earned this." Then she picked up her bags and walked inside. The first week was overwhelming. The classes were harder than anything Zora had ever experienced. The readings were dense. The professors were demanding. Professor Leonard Hayes, who taught constitutional law, had a reputation that walked into the room 10 minutes before he did. He was tall, dark-skinned, gray at the temples, and he had a stare that could make a grown man forget his own name. He didn't believe in hand-holding. He used the Socratic method, which meant he picked a student at random, asked a question, and then tore their answer apart piece by piece in front of the whole class. Students feared him. Some worshipped him. Most just tried not to make eye contact. On the 3rd day of class, Professor Hayes looked around the room. His eyes scanned the rows of students, some confident, some terrified, some hiding behind their laptops. His gaze landed on Zora. Front row, notebook open, pen in hand, no laptop. She was the only student in the room without one. "You," Hayes said, pointing at her. "Miss Williams, stand up." Zora stood. Her heart was beating fast, but her face was calm. She had practiced this, not the question itself, but the calmness. She had spent her whole life learning how to look steady even when she was shaking inside. "Tell me about Marbury versus Madison," Professor Hayes said. "And don't just recite facts. I want analysis. I want to know what you think." The room was silent. 200 eyes on her. Zora could feel them. She took a breath, and then she spoke. She didn't just answer the question. She dissected it. She talked about judicial review. She talked about the balance of power. She talked about the implications of the ruling that still echoed in modern case law 200 years later. She connected it to contemporary issues. She cited cases that most first-year students hadn't even heard of yet. When she finished, the room was quiet. Professor Hayes stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something that nobody in that room had ever seen him do in the first week of class. He nodded, slowly, with what might have been, if you squinted hard enough, the ghost of a smile. "Sit down, Miss Williams," he said. Then he turned to the rest of the class. "That is the standard. Meet it." Whispers rippled through the room like a stone dropped in still water. "Who is she?" Zora sat down, kept her face neutral, and wrote the date at the top of her notebook. But inside, her heart was doing backflips from that day forward. Zora was a rocket. She aced every assignment, destroyed every exam, participated in every class discussion with the kind of precision that made professors stop mid-sentence and say, "Excellent point, Miss Williams." She spent every night in the law library, sometimes until 2, 3 in the morning, surrounded by towers of textbooks and case files, highlighter in hand, coffee growing cold beside her. She didn't do it for attention. She didn't do it for praise. She did it because every time she opened a textbook, she saw her mama's hands, rough, cracked, scrubbing a stranger's bathtub, and she thought, "I will not waste this chance. I will not." First semester results came out. Zora Williams, top of the class, number 1, and it wasn't even close. Second semester, same thing. Then came prize day at the end of first year. It was a big deal at Crestwood. The whole school gathered in the main auditorium, students, faculty, families. The First-Year Excellence Award was the most prestigious honor a first-year law student could receive. It had been given out for 47 years. The winner's name got engraved on a bronze plaque in the main lobby. When Dean Caldwell walked to the podium and read the name, nobody was surprised. "This year's First-Year Excellence Award goes to Miss Zora Williams." The auditorium erupted. Faculty members stood and clapped. Professor Hayes didn't stand. He wasn't the standing type. But he clapped with a firm, steady beat that said more than any ovation could. Zora walked to the stage on legs that felt like jelly. She accepted the crystal trophy, the $3,000 gift card, and a leather-bound certificate with her name in gold lettering. She looked out at the audience. She thought about her mama back in Chicago, watching the live stream on her phone during her break at the Marriott. "Thank you," Zora said into the microphone, her voice steady. "I just want to say, this is for my mama. Everything I do is for her." The applause swelled. Somewhere in the back row, a few students wiped their eyes, but not everybody was clapping with their heart. In the 5th row center section sat a young woman with flawless edges, perfect nails, and a cream-colored blazer that cost more than Zora's entire wardrobe. She was clapping. Her hands were moving together in a polite rhythm. She had a smile on her face, but her eyes were doing something else entirely. Her name was Monica Price, and she was watching Zora Williams accept that award with a fire burning in her stomach that she couldn't explain and couldn't control. 2 seats away from Monica, her father, Judge Harold Price, sat with his arms crossed. He leaned toward his wife, Dr. Cynthia Price, and murmured just loud enough for Monica to hear, "That girl there is something special. You know, she's on full scholarship." No connections, no legacy, just talent. He didn't mean it as a dig, he was just impressed. But Monica heard something else entirely. She heard, "That girl is better than you, and she didn't even have the advantages you had." Monica's smile stayed on her face, perfectly fixed, like it was painted on. But behind it, something dark was beginning to grow. A seed, small, quiet, dangerous. She watched Zora walk off the stage with that trophy in her hands. She watched the professors shake her hand and pat her on the back. She watched the students crowd around her. And Monica thought, "Enjoy this, Zora. Enjoy every second of it." The cafeteria at Crestwood was a noisy, bustling space during lunch hours. Students crowded around tables, talking about cases, professors, weekend plans. Groups formed naturally, study partners, old friends, people who bonded over shared misery in Professor Hayes's class. Zora sat alone. She always sat alone. Not at a big table in the center. At a small 2-person table near the window in the corner with a textbook open beside her tray. She ate with one hand and turned pages with the other. She wasn't lonely. At least that's what she told herself. She was focused. She didn't have time for small talk and gossip. She had readings to finish and cases to brief and a scholarship to maintain. But sometimes, just sometimes, she would look up from her book and see the groups of students laughing together. Sharing fries, arguing about some case they all found ridiculous. And a tiny part of her, a part she never let anyone see, would feel a small ache in her chest. She'd push it down. Flip the page. Keep reading. It was on one of these afternoons, about 2 weeks after Prize Day, that a tray slid onto the table across from hers. Zora looked up. Monica Price was standing there, smiling like sunshine. "Hey, girl," Monica said, settling into the chair like she'd been sitting there for years. "I'm Monica. I don't think we've officially met, but I just had to come over and say your speech at Prize Day. Oh my God. I literally had tears in my eyes. What you said about your mom, beautiful, just beautiful." Zora blinked. She wasn't used to this. People didn't just walk up to her and start talking, especially not people who looked like Monica, polished, confident, clearly from money. "Thank you," Zora said carefully, politely, "the way you respond to a stranger." "I'm serious," Monica continued, leaning forward like they were already best friends. "I've been watching you in class and know that doesn't sound as creepy as it sounds." She laughed. It was a warm laugh, easy, the kind that made you want to laugh too. Zora didn't laugh. She gave a small, tight smile. "I appreciate that." Monica tilted her head. "You always eat alone." "I like the quiet," Zora said. "Helps me focus." "Get that," Monica said, nodding like she truly understood. "But even geniuses need a break sometimes, right? Listen, I struggle so much in Professor Hayes's class. I mean, that man is terrifying, and you just stand up and answer like it's nothing. I would love to study with you sometime, if you're open to it." Looked at her. She studied Monica's face the way she studied case law, carefully, looking for cracks, for inconsistencies. She found none. Monica's face was open, warm, and earnest, but Zora had learned something growing up on the South Side. People don't always show you who they are right away. Sometimes they show you who they want you to see. "Think about it," Zora said. She closed her textbook and stood up. "I gotta get to the library. Nice to meet you, Monica." She picked up her tray and walked away. Polite, clean, exit. Monica watched her go. The smile stayed on her face, but her eyes narrowed just slightly. Most people would have jumped at the chance to be her friend. Monica Price didn't get turned down, ever, but she wasn't discouraged. Not even a little bit. "You'll come around, Zora," she thought. They always do over the next few weeks. Monica showed up everywhere. Zora was in the library. Monica was 2 tables away, waving hello. Zora grabbed coffee from the campus cafe. Monica was in line behind her. "Oh my gosh, what a coincidence." Zora was walking to class. Monica fell into step beside her like they'd been walking together for years, and she was never pushy. That was the thing, she was never aggressive about it. She was light, casual, breezy, always with a compliment, always with a laugh, always remembering little details that Zora mentioned in passing. "How's your mom doing? You said she was picking up extra shifts, right? I hope she's resting." "You finished that property law brief." "I know you were stressed about it. I'm sure you killed it though. You always do." "I grabbed you a coffee. Black, 2 sugars, right? I remembered from last time. It was strategic, calculated. And it was working because here's the thing about Zora Williams. She was brilliant, she was disciplined, she was tough, but she was also human. And she had been alone for a very long time. She'd been alone at school, alone at lunch, alone on holidays when other kids went to their dad's houses and she stayed home because her dad had vanished. Alone in the library at midnight with nothing but textbooks and the sound of her own breathing. And now here was this girl, this bright, warm, magnetic girl who kept showing up, who kept remembering her name, her coffee order, her mama's schedule, who kept looking at her like she actually mattered. Not for her grades, not for her awards, but just for her. The wall cracked. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening. Zora was in the library, surrounded by her usual fortress of books. She was tired. She had been up since 5 that morning. Her eyes were blurry. Her neck ached. Monica walked in, soaking wet from the rain, carrying 2 containers of food. "Girl," Monica said, shaking the water off her jacket, "I know you've been in here for 6 hours because I literally saw you walk in this morning. Have you eaten anything?" Zora opened her mouth to say she was fine. "Lie to me," Monica said with a grin. She set one of the containers in front of Zora. "Grilled chicken, rice, steamed broccoli. I know you don't like fried stuff." Stared at the food. Then she looked up at Monica, and for the first time something in her chest loosened, just a little, like a knot that had been pulled tight for 24 years finally easing up. "Thank you," Zora said, and she meant it, really meant it. Monica sat down across from her. "That's what friends are for. Friends." The word settled over Zora like a warm blanket. She couldn't remember the last time someone had called her that. They ate together. They talked not about law, but about life. Zora told Monica about growing up in Chicago, about the apartment with the dripping faucet, about her mama's hands, about her daddy leaving without a word. Monica listened. She listened so well. Her eyes were soft. She nodded in all the right places. She reached across the table and squeezed Zora's hand when the story about her father got heavy. Incredible, Zora, Monica said quietly. Like, genuinely incredible. You came from nothing and you're out here beating everybody. That takes a kind of strength that most people will never understand. Zora looked away. She wasn't used to compliments that felt real. She wiped her eye quickly, pretending it was the library's bad ventilation. And just like that, the wall came down. Over the next 2 months. Zora and Monica became inseparable. Study sessions every evening. Coffee runs every morning. They sat next to each other in class. They texted throughout the day, little jokes, memes, complaints about professors. Zora laughed more than she had in years. She didn't know she could laugh like that. Big, free laughs that came from her belly and made her eyes crinkle. Monica had this way of turning everything into a joke, even the hard stuff. Even the scary stuff. She made law school feel less like a battlefield and more like an adventure. And for Zora, who had spent her entire life being the serious one, the focused one, the one who never had time for fun, this felt like breathing fresh air for the first time. One night, Zora called her mama. "Hey, baby," Denise answered. She sounded tired. She always sounded tired. But she also always sounded happy when Zora called. "Mama," Zora said, and Denise could hear the smile in her daughter's voice. "I think I finally made a real friend." Denise paused. "A friend?" "Yeah, her name's Monica. She's really sweet, Mama. She looks out for me. She brings me food when I forget to eat. She actually cares." There was a silence on the other end, not a long one, just a beat, just enough for Denise to choose her next words carefully. "That's nice, baby," Denise said. "I'm glad you have someone. You've been alone too long." "I know, right?" Zora said, laughing. "But Zora..." "Yeah, Mama." Denise's voice dropped, just a little, just enough to carry the weight of 52 years of living and learning and getting burned. "Everybody who smiles at you is smiling for you, baby. Remember that. Some people smile in your face while they're sharpening the knife behind their back. I'm not saying this girl is like that. I'm just saying keep your eyes open, even with the people you trust, especially with the people you trust." Zora rolled her eyes. She loved her mama, but Denise could be overprotective sometimes. Too cautious, too suspicious. "Mama, you worry too much," Zora said. "Monica's not like that. She's good." "I hope so, baby," Denise said softly. "I truly hope so." They said goodnight. Zora plugged in her phone, pulled the covers up to her chin, and smiled in the dark. For the first time since she arrived in Atlanta, she didn't feel alone. She had a friend, a real one. Or so she thought that same night. At 11:47 p.m., Monica Price sat alone in her off-campus apartment. The place was sleek, modern, paid for by her father's money. A large mirror hung on the wall across from her bed, and Monica stared at her own reflection as she held her phone to her ear. It rang twice before someone picked up. "Hey," the voice on the other end said. It was Tanya Moore, Monica's oldest friend, her most loyal follower, the kind of friend who did what she was told and didn't ask too many questions. "I got close to her," Monica said. Her voice was calm, steady. Not a trace of the warm, bubbly girl who had just spent the evening laughing with Zora in the library. This was the real Monica, the one nobody saw. "She trusts me now," Monica continued. "Like actually trusts me. She told me about her daddy, her mama, everything. She's an open book." "What now?" Tanya asked. Monica was quiet for a moment. She looked at herself in the mirror. Perfect hair, perfect skin, perfect life. But behind those perfect eyes was something cold, something that had been growing since prize day. Since her father leaned over to her mother and praised a girl who had nothing over his own daughter who had everything. "Now," Monica said slowly, "we go to work." "Monica," Tanya hesitated. "What exactly are you planning?" Monica stood up. She walked to the mirror, leaned in close until her breath fogged the glass. "By the time I'm done," she said quietly, "nobody at that school will even remember her name." She hung up, set the phone down, and stared at her reflection for a long, long time. The girl in the mirror stared back and smiled. "Oh, you know this is about to get messy. If you want to see what Monica does next, and trust me, it's so much worse than you think, then make sure you smash that like button right now and drop a comment telling me this. Have you ever had a friend who turned out to be your worst enemy? I want to hear your stories." The thing about a slow poison is that it works because you don't taste it. If Monica had walked up to Zora on day one and said, "I hate you and I'm going to destroy you," Zora would have put her walls back up and never looked back. She was smart enough for that, strong enough for that, but Monica didn't do it that way. Monica was far too smart for the direct approach. She had gotten close to Zora first, made herself necessary, made herself trusted, made herself loved. And now, with that trust wrapped around her like a warm coat, Monica began to work. It started so small that if you blinked, you missed it. It was a Thursday afternoon in the student lounge. Monica was sitting with classmate Brittany Cole, a loud, opinionated girl from Memphis who had strong opinions about everything and no problem sharing them. They were eating chips and complaining about an upcoming assignment when Monica tilted her head and said almost casually, like the thought had just floated into her mind from nowhere, "Hey, can I ask you something? Don't you think it's kind of weird how Zora always gets perfect scores?" Brittany paused mid-chew. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Monica lowered her voice, like she was sharing something uncomfortable. Like a person who didn't want to say what they were about to say but felt responsible for saying it. Every exam, every assignment, perfect, every time, like nobody scores perfect every time, not in Hayes's class, not in any class, right? Brittany frowned slowly. "I mean, I guess she's just really smart, though." "Oh, definitely," Monica said quickly, holding up her hand. "I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying it's interesting, that's all." She popped a chip in her mouth, shrugged. Change the subject just like that. 30 seconds. No accusation, no declaration, just a small, poisoned seed dropped into the soil of another person's mind, and it took root immediately because that's how rumors work. They don't announce themselves. They don't arrive with flashing lights and warning signs. They arrive as observations, as questions, as things a concerned friend says with furrowed brows and lowered voices. They arrive wrapped in the language of people who care. And Monica was the most caring girl in the room. 2 days later, in the hallway between classes, she found classmate Derek Simmons, a competitive, slightly insecure second year who had never quite gotten over being number 2 behind Zora on the last exam rankings. Monica walked beside him for about 20 steps before she said, casually, like she was talking about the weather, "Derek, can I ask you something? And please don't make a big deal of this because I'm sure it was nothing." Derek slowed his pace. "What?" "During the last exam," Monica said, her voice dropping to a murmur, "I could have sworn I saw Zora glancing at her phone under the desk. I mean, I'm probably wrong. My angle wasn't great, but I noticed it and I've just felt weird about it ever since. I'm sure it was nothing, though." Derek stared at her. "You serious?" "I'm not trying to start anything," Monica said quickly, patting his arm. "Please don't say anything to anyone. I just needed to tell someone. It's been bothering me and I didn't know who to talk to." She gave him a wide, earnest look. "You're someone I trust." Derek said he wouldn't say anything. He told 3 people by the end of the day. But the most important conversation Monica had was not in the student lounge or the hallway. It was in her own apartment, late at night, with Tanya Moore sitting across from her on the couch. Tanya Moore was Monica's oldest friend. They had grown up in the same neighborhood, gone to the same private school, pledged the same organization. Tanya was smart enough, but she had long ago accepted that Monica was the leader of their duo. She followed. That was her role. It was comfortable, familiar, but lately the comfort was fading. Because lately, what Monica was asking her to follow along with was getting heavier. "Need you to be ready," Monica told Tanya that night. "If anyone asks, professor, classmate, anyone, I need you to say that you saw Zora cheating. Not a full story, just that you noticed something that seemed off. Something with her phone or her bag, you don't have to be specific." Tanya sat with her hands in her lap. She stared at the carpet. "Monica, she didn't actually cheat, though." "That's not the point," Monica said, her voice patient, the way a teacher is patient with a slow student. "Then what is the point?" Tanya asked. Monica looked at her with those calm, dark eyes. "The point is that people already have doubts. All we're doing is giving those doubts a little direction." Tanya opened her mouth, closed it, looked at the carpet again. "She's your friend," Tanya said quietly. "She's not my friend," Monica said, just like that. Simple, clean, final. The warmth she showed Zora every single day, every laugh, every coffee run, every hand squeeze, it was nowhere in those 4 words. "She was never my friend. She was a project." Tanya looked up at Monica, and for a moment, just a moment, something shifted in her eyes, something that looked a lot like fear, but she nodded. Because that's what Tanya did. She nodded, and she hated herself for it. Meanwhile, Zora Williams had no idea, none. 0. She was living the best chapter of her life, and she didn't even know that someone was quietly typing the ending. She was still acing everything. Still in the library at 2 a.m. Still answering questions in Professor Hayes's class that made her classmates exhale slowly and look at each other like, did she really just say that? She was still the same Zora, but now she was also happy. And that was new. And it felt good, really good, because Monica was still there every morning with the right coffee. Monica was still texting her memes at midnight when they were both drowning in case briefs. Monica was still laughing with her at the things that nobody else understood, the specific kind of tired you feel after an 8-hour study session, the bizarre satisfaction of color-coding your notes, the way Professor Hayes's left eyebrow moved slightly when he was about to destroy someone's argument. It felt real. Every single bit of it felt real. And then Marcus Cole walked into the picture. Zora had noticed Marcus before, the way you notice a quiet storm on the horizon, something powerful but distant. He was a third year. Tall, broad-shouldered, always in a hoodie and jeans no matter how many other people showed up in blazers. He had a stillness about him that Zora recognized because she had it too, the kind of stillness that comes from a person who is always thinking more than they're saying. He was in the library almost as often as she was. They had exchanged nods, brief ones. The kind of nod that says, "I see you, I respect what you're doing, keep going." That was it. Until a Tuesday evening in October, Zora was at her usual table, window corner, lamp angled perfectly. Textbooks stacked in order of urgency when a chair scraped across the floor and Marcus sat down across from her. Just like that, Zora looked up, raised one eyebrow. "Know you," Marcus said. His voice was low and unhurried. "You're the one who made Hayes nod on the first day of class." "People talk too much at this school," Zora said. Marcus smiled. A small, genuine smile. Not a performance, not a move, just a real smile. "I was there, I saw it. I've been wanting to talk to you ever since." He extended his hand across the table. "Marcus Cole, third year." Zora looked at his hand, then at his face, then back at her textbook. "I'm studying," she said. "I know," Marcus said, unbothered. He pulled out his own book. "So am I." He stayed at her table for 2 hours. They didn't talk much, just studied beside each other in that easy, comfortable silence that only exists between people who are genuinely okay with themselves. At the end of the session, he packed up his bag, stood up, and said, "Same time Thursday." Zora looked up at him. She wanted to say no. She had a whole speech ready in her head about how she preferred to study alone, but something about the way he asked, like it was the most uncomplicated thing in the world, like he was just asking about the weather, made the speech evaporate. "Maybe," she said. He nodded once. "I'll take it." And he walked away. Zora watched him leave. Then she turned back to her book. She definitely wasn't smiling. She was 100% not smiling. Okay. She was smiling a little. Monica noticed. She had stopped by the library that evening looking for Zora and seen them through the glass door sitting across from each other, studying in silence, the lamp casting a warm circle of light over both of them. She stood in the hallway for a full minute, watching. Something in her stomach turned. It wasn't jealousy about Marcus specifically. Monica could have Marcus if she wanted him. She could have most people if she wanted them. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that Zora was getting everything. The grades, the awards, the professor's respect, the whole school's attention, and now someone was looking at her like she was precious. Like she was worth protecting. It was too much. It was all too much. Monica walked away from the library without going in. She pulled out her phone and texted Tanya, "We need to move faster." The shift in the atmosphere around Zora happened gradually, and then all at once. It was like a temperature change. You don't notice it degree by degree. You just notice that one day it's warm, and then another day you step outside and it's cold, and you can't point to the exact moment it changed. It started with the looks. Classmates who used to smile at her in the hallway started giving her these careful, sideways glances, like they were trying to see something, like they were measuring her. Brittany Cole, who Zora had always gotten along with fine, started being weirdly quiet whenever Zora sat near her. Derek Simmons, who used to ask Zora to study with him, stopped asking. Study groups went quiet when she walked in. Not dramatically silent, not in a movie way where everyone stops talking and stares. Subtly silent, like a conversation just happened to reach a natural pause right at the moment she arrived. Like topics naturally changed the second she pulled up a chair. Zora felt it. She was smart. She felt everything, but she couldn't name it, couldn't grab it. It slipped through her fingers every time she tried to examine it. There was nothing concrete, nothing specific, just a slowly cooling room and the feeling that somewhere, somehow, something was being said about her that she wasn't allowed to hear. She shook it off. She had work to do. She didn't have time for social politics. But then Professor Hayes changed. And that she couldn't shake off. It was subtle at first. He stopped calling on her in class, which was fine. He had other students to challenge. But then she noticed he started collecting her exams separately from the rest of the class. A quick, expressionless reach across her desk, like he was picking up evidence at a crime scene. She noticed him watching her more during tests, not the encouraging watchfulness of a mentor tracking a star student, but the sharp, careful watchfulness of someone who was looking for something specific. She noticed that when she submitted her latest brief, 12 pages, meticulously researched, personally her best work yet, his feedback was minimal. 3 lines where he usually gave her a full page of notes, not because it was bad, but because it was almost like he didn't want to engage with it, like he was keeping his distance. It felt like a punch to the stomach. A slow, confused, aching punch that left a bruise she couldn't explain. She went to his office hours. She knocked. He called her in. His office was lined with books, floor to ceiling. A single window let in pale afternoon light. He sat behind his desk and folded his hands when she sat across from him. "Professor Hayes," Zora said, keeping her voice even. "I want to ask you directly, have I done something to disappoint you? Because recently it feels like—" "Miss Williams," Professor Hayes cut in, his voice measured and careful. "You have done nothing wrong, you may go." His voice was polite, his words were clean. But the space between them, the way he looked just to the left of her face instead of at her, the way his jaw was set just slightly too tight, the careful neutrality of a man who was working very hard not to show what he was actually thinking, told Zora everything. He didn't believe her anymore. She didn't know why. She didn't know about the concerned conversations Monica had been having with certain teaching staff. She didn't know about the carefully worded emails that had been sent from a fake student account, expressing worry about suspicious behavior during exams. She didn't know about the screenshots, fabricated, painstaking, horrifyingly convincing screenshots that showed Zora Williams in a text thread asking someone for exam questions in advance. She knew none of that. She just knew that the man who had told the whole class she was the standard, the man who had nodded at her like she was something rare and real, was now looking just to the left of her face. Zora walked out of his office, stood in the hallway, stared at the wall for a moment, then she pulled herself together, stood up straight, and went back to the library, because what else was there to do? The comment from Janny Watts happened on a Wednesday morning. Janny was a second-year student, not someone Zora had any particular relationship with, positive or negative. She was just a face in the crowd. One of the many. Zora was walking down the main hallway toward class when Janny fell into step beside her, or rather, appeared beside her in that way people do when they want an audience more than a conversation. 2 of Janny's friends were right behind her. "Hey, Zora," Janny said, with a smile that was just a little too wide to be warm. "Must be nice, huh?" Zora glanced at her. "What must be nice?" "Always getting A's," Janny said with a little laugh. "Every single time, no matter what." She tilted her head. "What's your secret? You got the answers in advance or something?" The hallway felt like it narrowed, like the walls moved in just a half-inch. The 2 girls behind Janny exchanged glances and covered small, knowing smiles with their hands. Zora stopped walking. She turned to look at Janny fully. Her face was unreadable, the same face she used in Hayes's class when she was working out a hard question. Calm, controlled, giving nothing away. "I study," Zora said simply. "That's my secret. Goodbye, Janny." She turned and kept walking, even, steady steps, chin up, eyes straight ahead, but her hands, hanging at her sides, had curled into quiet fists. She went straight to Monica, because that's what you do when the world feels sideways and you have a best friend. You go to your best friend and you let it out. Monica was in their usual study spot. She looked up when Zora walked in and immediately read the look on her face. "What happened?" Monica asked, her voice full of concern. Zora sat down and told her everything. Janny's comment, Hayes's coldness, the shifting energy in the study groups. All of it. Monica's face moved through a perfect performance. Concern, outrage, sympathy, indignation. She leaned forward and took Zora's hand. "Oh my God, Zora," Monica said. "That's awful. That's genuinely awful. People are so jealous of you. This is just jealousy, babe, plain and simple. They can't stand that you outwork everybody and it shows, so they try to tear you down." She squeezed Zora's hand. "Don't even give it energy," Monica said firmly. "You keep doing what you're doing, and I got your back. You hear me? I got your back." Zora looked at Monica's face, that warm, fierce, loyal face, and she felt better, just like Monica knew she would. What Zora didn't know, what she had absolutely no way of knowing, was that Monica had spent the 45 minutes before Zora arrived composing the most damaging piece of the puzzle she had built yet. A cheat sheet, printed, folded, small enough to tuck between the pages of a notebook. It looked like notes, the kind of notes a student might scribble down to study, except that the information on it corresponded precisely with questions from the upcoming constitutional law midterm exam. Questions that nobody outside of Professor Hayes's office should have known. Monica had gone to great lengths to get those questions. Lengths that would have shocked everyone who knew her as the put-together, polished daughter of a federal judge. But Monica was thorough. Monica was always thorough. She folded the cheat sheet into a tight, neat square and tucked it into the front pocket of Zora's bag while Zora's back was turned, while Zora was wiping her eye and staring out the window, recovering from everything she had just shared. 10 seconds, no hesitation. Clean, and then Monica smiled and said, "You want some coffee? I'll go grab us some coffee." The day of the constitutional law midterm exam arrived on a gray, drizzling Friday morning. The exam hall was packed. 200 students filling rows of individual desks, the scratch of pencils and the tap of keyboards filling the room. Professor Hayes stood at the front, arms folded, watching the room the way a hawk watches a field. Zora was in her usual spot. Third row, center seat. She had studied every possible angle of every possible question. She was ready. She was always ready. This was what she did. She reached into her bag for her pen. Her fingers found the folded square of paper first. She frowned, pulled it out, looked at it. She didn't recognize it. She unfolded it. Read the first 2 lines. The color drained from her face. These were exam questions. Actual exam questions. Written out with corresponding notes and case citations. She was looking at a cheat sheet for the exact exam she was sitting in right now. She had never seen this paper before in her life. She did not write it. She did not put it in her bag. She had no idea how it got there. For 3 seconds, Zora just stared at it. Her brain, which was always fast, was suddenly moving in slow motion. She couldn't make sense of what she was holding. It was like finding a weapon in your house that you didn't buy and couldn't explain. She should have immediately put her hand up and shown it to the professor. She should have said, "This was in my bag and I don't know how it got there." She should have done that immediately, but she was 24 years old. She was the black girl on scholarship in a room full of people who already doubted her. She was looking at a piece of paper that made her look guilty, and she knew, with the deep, instinctive knowledge of someone who has spent their whole life having to prove themselves in rooms that weren't built for her. That saying, "I don't know how this got here," was not going to land the way she needed it to. She was going to put it back in her bag. She was going to deal with it after the exam. That was the plan. But plans have a way of dying before they start. Because in the half-second that she hesitated, paper in her hand, mouth half open, brain still scrambling, the folded sheet slipped from her fingers. It fell to the floor with a soft, devastating whisper of paper on tile, right at the feet of the teaching assistant who had been slowly walking the aisle beside her row. The TA, a third year named Cameron, stopped. Looked down, picked it up with 2 fingers like it was something fragile. He unfolded it. Read the first line. His eyes went wide. He looked at Zora. Zora looked back at him. And she saw the exact moment his expression shifted from surprise to conclusion. "Miss," Cameron said quietly. "That is not mine," Zora said. Her voice was steady, firm. She was already in defense mode. "That paper was already in my bag when I sat down. I don't know how it got there." "I was about to bring it to you." Cameron looked at the paper, looked at her. The wheels turning behind his eyes were visible from a mile away. He walked to the front of the room. The room was already going quiet, students lifting their heads, curious, alert. The way people get when something unexpected interrupts a silence. Cameron reached Professor Hayes, leaned in, handed him the paper, spoke 3 words too low for anyone else to hear. Hayes took the paper, read it, then he looked up. His eyes found Zora across the room, and Zora saw the exact thing she had been terrified of seeing in those eyes for weeks. It wasn't anger. It wasn't confusion. It was the flat, gray, dull look of a man who has decided that something he hoped wasn't true has just been confirmed. Disappointment. The deep, permanent kind. The kind that doesn't bounce back. The whole room was watching now. 200 pairs of eyes on Zora Williams. And the silence was the kind that rings. Zora sat up straight in her chair. Her face was a wall. She would not crumble. Not here. Not in front of all of them. But inside her chest, behind the wall, something was breaking. Something she had been building her whole life was cracking at the foundation. And she could feel every fracture. She was called to Dean Caldwell's office before the day was out. The letter was official. Cold. 3 paragraphs. She read it standing in the hallway outside her apartment door. Her scholarship was suspended pending investigation. She had 10 days before the formal disciplinary hearing. If the charges were upheld, she would be expelled from Crestwood University School of Law. Expelled. That word, she read it 3 times. Then she sat down right there in the hallway back against the door, knees pulled to her chest, and stared at the wall across from her. Everything. Everything she had worked for. Every 2 a.m. night. Every skipped social event. Every hour of sleep she traded for a case brief. Every moment of her mother's sacrifice. Every floor Denise ever scrubbed. Every cracked, rough, bleeding hand, all of it. In a 10-day countdown, Zora sat in that hallway for a long time, then she got up, went inside, sat on the edge of her bed, picked up her phone, and called her mama. The phone rang twice. "Hey, baby." Denise answered, and just the sound of her voice, warm, tired, happy to hear from her girl, made Zora's whole body tighten up against a sob. "Hey, Mama," Zora said. Denise heard it immediately. Mamas always do. "Baby, what's wrong?" Zora opened her mouth to start with something easy, something soft, a way to cushion it. But the moment she tried to form the first gentle word, the wall came down. The sob she'd been holding back since the exam hall, since Hayes looked at her like that, since Cameron picked up that paper, since 200 people watched her become a suspect, broke through like a flood. She cried. Hard. Full body. The kind of cry that comes from the deepest, most exhausted part of a person. The kind that takes everything out of you and leaves you empty and hollow and raw. On the other end, Denise didn't say anything at first. She just listened. She let her daughter cry. She stayed on the line and breathed and waited. When the worst of it had passed and Zora was down to shaky, broken breaths, she told her mama everything, all of it, the cheat sheet, the hearing, the scholarship suspension, Hayes's face, Janny's comment, the shifting atmosphere, the rumors she now realized had been circling for weeks. There was a silence on Denise's end, a long one, the kind that isn't empty but full of a mother processing pain that isn't even her own but cuts deeper than if it were. Then Denise spoke. Her voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it was something made of iron. "Listen to me, Zora. You listen to me right now," Zora sniffled. "Yes, Mama. I did not scrub floors for 26 years for the devil to come steal your dream," Denise said slowly, every word placed like a brick in a wall. "You hear me. I did not wake up at 5 in the morning and put my hands in strangers' dirty water and come home with my feet bleeding and do it again the next day for my child's future to be taken by a lie." Her voice cracked, just once, then it steadied again. "You did not cheat. I know you didn't cheat. And somewhere in that building there is a truth that knows you didn't cheat, and you are going to find it." Zora pressed her fist against her mouth. "Now dry your eyes," Denise said. "Because I'm getting on the next bus to Atlanta. And when I get there, we are going to fight this thing, together. Do you hear me, baby?" "Yes, Mama," Zora whispered. "It like you mean it," Denise said firmly. "Yes, Mama," Zora said, stronger this time. "That's my girl," Denise said softly. "I'm coming, you hold on." Sat on her bed after the call. Her eyes were swollen, her chest was hollow. But somewhere in her spine, in that deep structural part of her that had been built by years of watching her mother refuse to fold, something hardened. She was not going to go down for something she didn't do. She didn't know how to prove it yet. But she was going to figure it out. She was still sitting there, staring at the wall, when she heard a soft knock at her door. She almost didn't answer it, but something made her get up. She opened the door. Marcus Cole was standing in the hallway. He wasn't dressed up, no performance in his posture. He was just there, hoodie, jeans, hands in his pockets, his expression carrying the quiet, particular weight of a person who knows something is wrong and came anyway. He looked at her red eyes. At the letter she was still holding. He didn't flinch. "I heard," he said simply. Zora stared at him. Her jaw was tight. She had about 60 seconds worth of pride left, and she didn't want to spend it breaking down in front of someone she barely knew. "I'm fine," she said. "Not," Marcus said, not meanly, just honestly. She looked at him for a moment. Then she stepped back and let him in. He sat in the chair by her desk. She sat on the edge of her bed. The room was quiet except for the rain against the window. "I want you to know something," Marcus said. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice level. "I've seen you in that library. I've watched you study. I know what your work ethic looks like. I know what a person who earns it looks like." He paused. "You didn't do this." Zora looked at him. "You don't know that." "Do," Marcus said. He wasn't performing certainty. He was just stating a fact the way you state that the sky is blue. "And I want to help you," Zora asked. The word came out more raw than she intended. "Why would you get involved in this?" Marcus looked at her. "Because what's happening to you is wrong, and the only reason it can keep happening is if good people do nothing." He held her gaze. "I'm not going to do nothing." Room was quiet for a moment. Rain tapping the window. the distant sound of cars on the street below. Zora looked at her hands. Then back at Marcus. I don't even know where to start, she said quietly. Marcus reached into the side pocket of his hoodie and pulled out his phone. He held it up slowly. I might, he said. Zora frowned. What do you mean? 2 days ago, Marcus said, his voice dropping just slightly lower. I was coming out of the men's bathroom on the second floor. The hallway was empty, or I thought it was. But when I turned the corner, I heard voices from the alcove near the stairwell. He paused. He looked at Zora with steady eyes. One of the voices was Monica's, he said. The word landed in the room like a stone into still water. Zora felt the ripple of it move through her body. She said nothing. She just looked at him. I don't know exactly what I heard, Marcus said carefully, but it was enough to make me start paying attention, and the more I paid attention, he set his phone on the desk between them, the more I started seeing a pattern. He looked at her. Zora, I think your friend Monica isn't who you think she is, and I think I can prove it. Stared at his phone, then at his face, then at the wall, then back at his face. The rain outside got harder. The morning after Marcus came to her apartment, Zora woke up before her alarm. She lay flat on her back staring at the ceiling. The rain from the night before had stopped. The room was still and gray with early light. For exactly 4 seconds, she felt the softness of waking up before the day's weight landed on her. Then it landed. She sat up, planted her feet on the floor, pressed her palms flat on her knees, and she made a decision. She was not going to spend the next 10 days feeling sorry for herself. She did not have that luxury. She had never had that luxury. Feeling sorry for herself was something people did when they had time and backup and a safety net. Zora had none of those things. She had a suspended scholarship, a mother on a Greyhound bus, and 9 days left before a hearing that would decide whether 24 years of sacrifice either meant something or got erased by a jealous girl with a printer and a burner phone. She washed her face, brushed her teeth, put her hair up, made coffee, sat at her desk with a legal pad in front of her and wrote at the top of the page in clean, clear letters. What do I know? What can be proven? Who saw what? She was going to treat this like a case. Because that's what it was. And she was going to be her own. Arrived at 9 o'clock sharp, just like he said he would. He came in, set his bag down, pulled out his laptop, and sat across from Zora at her small kitchen table without preamble. No small talk, no performance. He was there to work, and he was ready to work. Zora appreciated that more than she could say. Okay, Marcus said, opening his laptop. Tell me everything you've noticed, every shift, every cold shoulder, every comment. Every moment that felt off. Don't edit it, just tell me. So Zora told him everything. The cafeteria conversations that stopped when she sat down, Hayes's slowly changing behavior, Derek's distance, Brittany's weirdness, Janny's comment in the hallway, the way the whole atmosphere of the program had quietly turned against her over the past several weeks like a tide she hadn't noticed until she was already underwater. Marcus listened without interrupting. He typed notes as she talked. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, scrolling back through what he had written. Okay, he said. Now I'm going to tell you what I've been seeing from the outside. He turned the laptop to face her. He had a list, names, dates, conversations. He had been quietly, methodically tracking the pattern since the night he overheard Monica and Tanya in the second-floor alcove. He wasn't a detective. He was just a law student who understood that in any case, the evidence tells a story, and all you have to do is follow it. Every rumor that had circulated about Zora had a point of origin. And when Marcus traced each one back, talked to classmates casually over the past 2 days, asked the right questions without revealing why he was asking, they all led to the same place, Monica Price. Every single one, not directly, not loudly, but always there. Always the one who first mentioned it. Always the one who expressed the gentle, concerned, I'm not trying to start anything worry that planted the seed. Always the one at the center of the web. Zora stared at the list on the screen. She read every name, every date, every conversation summary. The feeling that moved through her was complex. It wasn't just pain. It wasn't just anger. It was something older and heavier, the particular devastation of having your instincts confirmed. Of realizing that the small, persistent alarm bell that had been ringing in the back of your head since the very first day Monica Price slid a tray across from hers in the cafeteria, that bell had been right all along. She had just chosen not to hear it. There's more, Marcus said carefully. He was watching her face. The alcove conversation I overheard. He reached into his bag and pulled out his phone. He set it on the table between them. I had my phone in my hand when I turned that corner. Voice memo was already running from a call I'd just ended. He looked at her. I got about 40 seconds of it. Zora looked at the phone, then at Marcus, then back at the phone. Play it, she said. Marcus pressed play. The recording was imperfect, hallway acoustics, a bit of static, some ambient noise, but the voices were clear enough, Monica's voice unmistakable, and Tanya's quieter, more hesitant. She trusts you now though, right? Like fully trusts you. That was Tanya. Completely. She told me everything. Her daddy leaving, her mama, everything. She thinks I'm her best friend. Monica, patient, almost amused. Monica, if this comes back to us. It won't come back to us. That's why I need you to stay in your lane and do what I told you to do. Just back me up. That's all I need from you. Just don't think, Tanya. A pause, the kind of pause that ends conversations. Back me up. Recording ended. The kitchen was silent. Zora stared at the phone for a long time. Her jaw was tight. Her hands, flat on the table, were completely still. She wasn't crying. She was past crying. She was somewhere on the other side of crying, a cold, clear, focused place that felt more like a courtroom than a bedroom. That's not enough to take to the hearing, Zora said finally. Her voice was steady, professional. It's circumstantial. They'll say it could be about anything. I know, Marcus said. He nodded slowly. Which means we need Tanya. Zora looked at him. Tanya Moore, Marcus said. She knows everything. She was there. She watched Monica do it. She's been carrying this for weeks and it's eating her alive. I can tell just from that recording. The hesitation, the pushback. She's not okay with this. She still went along with it, Zora said flatly. She did, Marcus agreed. But there's a difference between a person who enjoyed doing something wrong and a person who did something wrong and can't live with it. Tanya is the second kind. He paused. And the second kind always breaks. Eventually. Zora thought about that. She thought about the hearing, about Dean Caldwell's stone face, about the 5 faculty members across that table, about her scholarship, her enrollment, her future, all of it balanced on a scale that was currently tipped hard against her. She thought about her mama on a bus. She thought about a tiny apartment with fake flowers on the kitchen table and a faucet that dripped all night long and hands that cracked in the winter. How do we get to Tanya? Zora asked. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You don't, he said. I do. Marcus found Tanya Moore the next morning in the campus cafe. She was sitting alone, which was unusual because Tanya was rarely alone. She was always orbiting Monica, always in the gravitational pull of Monica's world. But today she was by herself, hunched over a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking, staring at the table with the expression of someone who hadn't slept in several nights running. She looked terrible, and Marcus suspected that was exactly what guilt looked like when you couldn't outrun it anymore. He sat down across from her without asking. Tanya looked up, saw who it was, and immediately started to gather her things. I have to go, she said. Tanya, Marcus said. Calm, no aggression, no accusation, just her name, spoken with enough quiet weight to make her hands pause on her bag. She didn't leave, but she didn't put the bag down either. I'm not here to threaten you, Marcus said. I'm not here to make you do anything. I just want to talk. He put both hands flat on the table, open, visible, unthreatening. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Tanya looked at him. Her eyes were red at the edges. She sat back down slowly, didn't put the bag down, just sat. I know what happened, Marcus said quietly. I know what Monica did and I know you were part of it, but I also know that you're not built for this. He paused. Because if you were, you'd be sleeping at night, and you're clearly not sleeping. Tanya looked away. She pressed her lips together hard. Williams is 10 days away from losing everything, Marcus said. Her scholarship, her degree, her future, everything she has ever worked for, and the only reason that can happen is if the truth stays buried. He leaned forward just slightly. You can keep it buried, Tanya. That's your choice to make. Nobody can force you, but you will carry this. Every time you see Zora's name on some court document someday, because she did make it through this, or every time you don't see her name because this hearing ended her career, you will carry whichever outcome that is, for the rest of your life. The cafe was buzzing around them. Students ordering drinks, baristas calling names, the whole world going about its business as if the most important conversation in Tanya Moore's life wasn't happening right here at this corner table. Tanya's hands were wrapped around her coffee cup. They were shaking slightly. She stared down at the dark surface of the liquid. Monica's family is powerful, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Her father is a federal judge if I go against her. I know, Marcus said. I know that's real. I'm not pretending that's nothing. She will make my life impossible, Tanya said, and the fear in her voice was real. Raw, she wasn't being dramatic. She genuinely believed it. Maybe, Marcus said honestly. But here's what I know for sure. Right now, right at this moment, you're already living an impossible life. Because you know what you know, and knowing it and staying quiet is its own kind of prison. He looked at her steadily. You came to this law school to learn how to fight for justice, Tanya, not to help bury it. A long silence. A tear slid down Tanya's left cheek. She wiped it fast with the back of her hand. Like she was annoyed at it for showing up, she stared at the table. And Marcus waited. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He just waited. It took about 90 seconds. Then Tanya more closed her eyes, took a long breath. And when she opened them again, something had shifted in her face. The fear was still there. But underneath all of it, was something that had clearly been waiting to surface for a very long time. Relief. The relief of a person who has finally decided to stop running. Tell the truth, she said quietly. I'll tell them everything. Denise Williams arrived in Atlanta on a Wednesday evening. She rolled a small carry-on bag, the nice one she only used for important occasions, through the doors of Zora's apartment building, and took the stairs because she didn't trust elevators in buildings she didn't know. When Zora opened the door and saw her mama standing there in her good coat with her reading glasses pushed up on her head and that expression on her face, the one that said asterisk, I am here now and we are going to handle this. Zora felt something in her chest that she had no words for. She stepped into her mother's arms. Denise held her daughter the way only a mother can hold a child, like she was simultaneously protecting her from everything behind her and pushing her forward into everything ahead of her. She didn't say anything for a long moment. She just held on, then she stepped back, held Zora's face in her hands, looked at her with those tired, fierce, bottomless eyes. You look like you haven't eaten, Denise said. Zora laughed. It was a wet, surprised laugh. Mama, that's the first thing you're going to say. I'm going to say all kinds of things, Denise said, walking past her into the apartment. But first I'm going to make you something to eat. Then we're going to sit down and you're going to tell me everything. And then we're going to make a plan. She set her bag down, looked around the apartment, nodded approvingly at how clean it was. Where's your kitchen? That night, with the smell of Denise's cooking filling the small apartment for the first time since Zora moved in, they sat at the kitchen table and went through everything. Marcus's recording, Tanya's agreement to testify, the pattern of rumors, the planted cheat sheet. Denise listened to every word. She asked sharp, precise questions. She wasn't just a worried mother sitting at that table. She was a woman who had spent 26 years watching how power worked, who got protected, who got believed, who got the benefit of the doubt and who didn't, and she understood the terrain they were walking into. When Zora finished, Denise was quiet for a moment. Then she folded her hands on the table and said, Baby, this Tanya. You trust that she'll actually speak up when she's in that room? Because fear has a way of changing people's minds at the last second. Marcus thinks she will, Zora said. What do you think? Denise pressed. Zora considered it. I think she's more afraid of herself at this point than she is of Monica. Denise nodded slowly. Then we go in there with everything we have, and we let the truth do what truth does. She reached across the table and squeezed Zora's hand, her rough, cracked, honest hand. They are not taking your dream, baby, Denise said. Not today, not ever. The morning of the disciplinary hearing arrived cold and clear. Zora stood in front of her bathroom mirror in a white button-down shirt, black slacks, and her good shoes, the ones she wore when things mattered. She looked at herself for a long moment. She thought about the last time she stood in front of a mirror before something terrifying. The night before her first day at Crestwood. Same posture, same set jaw, same quiet word to herself, you belong here. You earned this, she said it again. Out loud this time, to the face in the mirror. Then she walked out the hearing room on the 3rd floor of Crestwood Law School was the same cold, wood-paneled room where this story began. 5 faculty members behind a long table. Dean Patricia Caldwell in the center. Professor Leonard Hayes at the far end. The room smelled like old paper and consequence. Zora walked in with Denise 1 step behind her and Marcus 3 steps behind them. She sat at the single chair in front of the panel. Denise sat in the row of chairs along the wall, straight-backed, hands folded in her lap, eyes clear and steady. In the gallery, the rows of chairs behind the low wooden divider, sat a small group of faculty witnesses and relevant parties. And in the front row of the gallery, looking impeccable as always, sat Monica Price. She had chosen her outfit carefully. A navy blazer, understated jewelry. The look of a concerned, reluctant witness who wished none of this had been necessary. She caught Zora's eye when Zora sat down. Monica's expression was a masterpiece of performed sadness. Like she was genuinely sorry this had come so far. Zora looked at her for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned back to the panel. Dean Caldwell opened the folder in front of her and the hearing began. The charges were read. The evidence was presented: the cheat sheet, the fake screenshots, the compiled testimonies from classmates who claimed to have witnessed suspicious behavior. It was laid out methodically, piece by piece, like bricks stacking into a wall. Zora sat through all of it with her hands folded on the table in front of her. Still, quiet, absorbing every word. When the presenting faculty member finished, Dean Caldwell looked at Zora. "Miss Williams," she said, "you may respond." Zora stood up. She didn't look at notes. She didn't look at her hands. She looked directly at the 5 faces across the table and she spoke. "I'm from the south side of Chicago," she began. "My mother is a housekeeper. She has been cleaning other people's homes and hotel rooms for 26 years. I watched her do it my whole life. I watched her hands crack and bleed. I watched her work double shifts so the lights would stay on and my tuition would get paid. I watched her give up every comfort she had so that I would have the chance she never got." The room was still. "I came to this school on a full scholarship that I earned with 4 years of perfect grades, 0 disciplinary issues, and the highest test scores in my high school's history. I have never cheated on a single exam. Not once. Not in middle school. Not in high school. Not here. Because I never had to. Because I studied. Because that is what I do. It is the only thing my family's sacrifice asked of me, that I show up and do the work. And I have done the work every single day I have been at this institution." She paused. "Let it sit. That cheat sheet did not belong to me. I did not write it. I did not bring it into that exam room. I discovered it in my bag and I was in the process of determining what to do when it fell. I understand how that looks. I understand that the optics are bad, but I am asking this panel to look past optics and look at evidence." She straightened slightly. "And I have evidence." She looked at Marcus. He stood up from his chair along the wall. He walked forward and handed Dean Caldwell a USB drive and a printed document. "This is a partial audio recording," Zora said. "That was captured in the second-floor hallway of this building approximately 2 weeks ago. It contains a conversation between Monica Price and a witness who will be speaking today. I would ask that it be played for the panel." Dean Caldwell looked at the USB drive. She looked at Zora. She inserted the drive into the laptop in front of her. The recording played through the room's speakers. The 40 seconds of Monica's voice, calm, deliberate, directing Tanya to back her up, confirming that Zora trusted her, treating Zora's friendship like a strategy, filled the hearing room with the specific kind of silence that follows something that cannot be taken back. When it ended, Dean Caldwell's expression had shifted. Subtly, but it had shifted. In the front row of the gallery, Monica's perfectly crafted expression flickered. Just once. Like a screen glitching for a single frame before recovering. Her jaw tightened slightly. Her hands, folded in her lap, pressed together just a little harder. "Furthermore," Zora said, "I'd like to call a witness." Tanya Moore walked into the hearing room the way a person walks into something they know is going to cost them something. Head down, shoulders forward, hands clutched together in front of her. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week, because she hadn't. She took the witness chair beside the table and stared at her hands for a moment. Monica stared at her from the front row. Her eyes, for the first time since this story began, showed something that was not manufactured. It was real. Raw. The look of someone watching their carefully constructed reality start to come apart at the seams. Dean Caldwell spoke gently. "Miss Moore, you are here to provide testimony relevant to this hearing. Please understand that you are expected to be truthful and that any willful dishonesty in these proceedings will carry its own disciplinary consequences." Tanya nodded, swallowed, looked up, and then Tanya Moore, in a voice that started as a whisper and grew steadier with every sentence, told the truth. She told them everything. She told them about the night Monica said Zora was a project. She told them about being coached to confirm stories she had never actually witnessed. She told them about the fake screenshots, how Monica had created them using a burner phone and a photo editing app, building them screen by screen in her apartment while Tanya sat on the couch telling her this was wrong, and Monica told her to be quiet. She told them about the cheat sheet, how Monica had spent an entire evening preparing it, how she had obtained the exam questions, and how she had slipped it into Zora's bag during their study session while Zora's back was turned. She described it in detail that only an eyewitness could provide. She didn't soften it. She didn't minimize it. She told it clean and straight and completely. By the time Tanya finished, the room felt different. The air felt different. Like something that had been pressing down on everything had been lifted. Tanya looked at Zora across the room. Her eyes were wet. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice broke on the second word. "I should have said something a long time ago. I am so sorry." Zora looked back at her. She didn't nod. She didn't smile. She just held Tanya's eyes for a long moment with an expression that was not anger and not absolution, but something more complicated than both. Then she turned back to the panel. The 5 faculty members were conferring in low voices. Hayes had his hands steepled in front of his face. His eyes were closed. His jaw was doing something difficult. Dean Caldwell looked at the gallery. At Monica. "Miss Price," she said, her voice carrying the particular temperature of someone who has made up their mind, but is going through the proper steps anyway. "Do you have anything to say?" Monica stood up. She was composed, remarkably composed in the way that people who have been performing their whole lives can pull composure out of nowhere, even when the stage is collapsing beneath them. "Think this recording has been taken out of context," Monica said crisply. "And I think the testimony of a witness who has already demonstrated willingness to misrepresent events should be treated with appropriate skepticism." She said it well. She said it like she believed it. She said it in the measured tone of a future litigator with a federal judge for a father. But the room did not receive it the way she needed it to, because Brittany Cole was also in that gallery. And so was Derek Simmons. And Dean Caldwell had already spoken to both of them before the hearing. And what they had told her, that every rumor, every whisper, every seed of doubt had been planted by the same hand, was already in the folder open in front of her. The evidence did not have a hole in it. Monica sat back down. And for the first time, she looked at the room the way people look at rooms when they realize the room is no longer on their side. The panel deliberated for 22 minutes. 22 minutes in which Zora sat in the hallway on a bench with her mother on one side and Marcus on the other. Denise held her daughter's hand and said nothing. She didn't need to say anything. Zora knew what every squeeze of her mother's hand meant. She'd been reading those hands her whole life. Marcus sat quietly, present, steady. The kind of person who does not fill silence with noise because he understands that some silences need to be respected. When the hearing room door opened and they were called back in, all 3 of them stood. They walked back in together. Dean Caldwell looked at Zora over the top of her reading glasses. "Miss Williams," she said, "this panel has reviewed all evidence and testimony presented today. After thorough deliberation, the panel has reached a unanimous decision." She paused, not for drama, just to breathe. "The charges of academic dishonesty against Zora Williams are hereby dismissed in their entirety. Your scholarship is fully reinstated effective immediately. This hearing and its records will be sealed and will not appear on your academic record." She set the paper down. "Furthermore," she continued, "this panel finds sufficient evidence of deliberate academic sabotage, fabrication of disciplinary evidence, and conduct unbecoming of this institution on the part of Monica Price. Disciplinary proceedings against Miss Price will commence immediately. Pending the outcome of those proceedings, Miss Price's enrollment at Crestwood University School of Law is suspended." Room was quiet. Then Denise Williams, sitting along the wall in her good coat with her reading glasses pushed up on her head, made a sound that was not quite a sob and not quite a laugh, but somewhere in between. The sound of 26 years of floors scrubbed, and shifts worked and prayers whispered in the dark finally being answered. Zora sat absolutely still for one long moment. She pressed her lips together, blinked twice, felt the sting of something she refused to call tears but was absolutely tears. Then she nodded. "Thank you," she said to the panel, quietly, with the dignity that had walked into this building with her on day one and never once left the hearing room without looking at anyone. She walked through the hallway with her bag on her shoulder and her chin up and her face set in an expression that was working very hard to be unreadable. She pushed through the building's front door and walked out into the bright afternoon sun, but there was nobody waiting for her on the other side. No Tanya, who had walked in a different direction, shoulders lighter than they'd been in weeks. No applauding classmates, no warm circle of people who had her back. Just a parking lot and a Range Rover and the beginning of a very long reckoning with who she had chosen to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. She read it. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes went very small and very quiet. She got in the car. and drove away. Professor Leonard Hayes caught Zora in the hallway outside the hearing room before she could reach the stairs. He stepped in front of her, not blocking her, just present, and she stopped. She looked at him. He was quiet for a moment. Hayes was always quiet before he spoke, but this silence was different. This was the silence of a man who had said the wrong thing by not saying anything and was now standing in the weight of it. "Miss Williams," he said. His voice was lower than usual, not weaker, just lower, like something in it had been humbled. "I owe you an apology." Zora waited. "I let whispers reach my judgment before evidence could," Hayes said. He looked directly at her, which was more difficult than it sounded, given what he had just watched unfold in that room. "I should have come to you directly. I should have asked you directly. Instead, I pulled back. I let the doubt sit, and I know what that cost you, not just procedurally, but personally." He paused. "That was a failure on my part, as a professor and as a mentor, and I am sorry." Zora looked at him for a long moment. She thought about the exam hall, about the way his eyes had found hers across 200 heads, about what it had felt like to see disappointment in the face of the one person whose belief in her had meant the most. She thought about what forgiveness was and what it wasn't. She knew it wasn't pretending something hadn't happened. It wasn't saying it was okay when it wasn't. It was something more like choosing to move forward without dragging the wound behind you. "I appreciate that, Professor," she said, calm, measured. Not warm because they weren't there yet, but honest. "I hope in the future when someone brings you a whisper, you'll ask for evidence first." Hayes nodded, once, firmly, like a man receiving a lesson he deserved. "I will," he said. Zora nodded back. Then she walked past him toward the stairs where her mother and Marcus were waiting. Hayes watched her go. And the expression on his face, if you had been close enough to see it, was the very same expression he had worn on the first day of class when she answered the Marbury question. Respect. Deep, quiet, permanent respect. The months that followed were the best of Zora Williams's life. She went back to class the following Monday like she had always done, front row, notebook open, pen in hand. The difference was in the room. The careful glances were replaced by something warmer. The quiet conversations weren't about her anymore, or when they were different. The story had changed. The narrative had flipped. Some classmates approached her and apologized. Some didn't. Zora didn't chase any of them. She had too much work to do. Brittany Coles stopped by her table in the library one afternoon and set a coffee down next to her textbook. Just set it down and kept walking. Zora watched her go, smiled to herself, picked up the coffee. Marcus and Zora, who had been dancing carefully around the obvious for the better part of a semester, finally had a real conversation about it on a Friday evening when they were both too tired to maintain any pretense. "Like you," Marcus said, matter-of-factly, across the library table at 11:30 at night. Zora looked up from her notes. "Is now really the time? I figure any time I'm this sure about something," he said, "is the right time to say it." She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back. Neither of them blinked. "Okay," Zora said. He repeated. "Okay," she said again, and turned back to her notes. Marcus stared at her for a second. Then he shook his head slowly, smiled the kind of smile that had no bottom to it, and turned back to his own work. It wasn't a movie moment. There was no dramatic music, no grand gesture, just two people who had seen each other at their most real and decided that was exactly what they wanted. Which, if you think about it, is better than any movie moment. Tanya Moore transferred to a law school in Washington, D.C. the following semester. Before she left, she slipped an envelope under Zora's apartment door. Inside was a handwritten letter, 2 pages, front and back, in small, careful handwriting. Zora read it twice. She sat with it for a long time. Then she wrote back, not a long letter, just a few sentences. But the last line of it said, "It took real courage to stand up in that room. I don't forget that. I wish you well, Tanya." She meant it. Both the difficulty and the wish. As for Monica Price, her father's name didn't save her from the disciplinary outcome at Crestwood. She was formally expelled following the proceedings. The fabrication of evidence and the academic sabotage campaign were documented and sealed in institutional records that would follow her through any future applications. She enrolled in a small, unremarkable law program across the country the following fall. She arrived without fanfare, without a front row, without a trophy with her name on it. For the first time in her life, she was not the most impressive person in the room, was not the most noticed, was not the most anything. What happened inside Monica Price during those months, whether she reflected, whether she recalibrated, whether she found the courage to examine the wound her parents had given her instead of inflicting it on others, no one knew. That was between Monica and her own mirror. What we know is that the girl who once said, "By the time I'm done, nobody at that school will even remember her name," was sitting in an anonymous classroom in a school nobody had heard of. While Zora Williams was graduating #1 from Crestwood University School of Law, in a cap and gown, with a bronze plaque in the main lobby carrying her name in gold letters, and an offer letter from one of the most respected civil rights law firms in Atlanta waiting in her inbox on graduation day, the auditorium was packed. Zora stood on the stage in her regalia. She held her diploma with both hands. She looked out at the crowd. She found her mama immediately. Denise Williams was in the third row. She was wearing her best dress, the navy one she saved for important occasions. She had her reading glasses on top of her head, and she was crying in the way she had cried the night the acceptance letter arrived, not quietly, not politely, but with her whole body, the way joy that has been carried a long time finally comes out. Zora looked at her mother. At those hands, rough, cracked, honest, pressed together in her lap, she thought about the apartment. The fake flowers on the kitchen table, the dripping faucet, the scholarship letter she had torn open in the lobby with shaking fingers, the phone call where she had broken down and her mother had said, "I didn't scrub floors for 26 years for the devil to steal your dream." She raised the diploma slightly. Just enough. A small, private gesture across a crowded room. "This is for you, Mama. All of it. Always." Denise pressed both hands to her heart and smiled. If you've made it to the end of this story, and I mean all the way to the end, then hit that subscribe button right now because you are exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. Drop a comment and tell me what hit you hardest in this story. Was it Zora's determination, Denise's love, Tanya's confession, Marcus showing up when it mattered, or Monica's fall? I read every single comment and I want to hear from you. Share this video with someone who needs it today. Because somebody out there is living this story right now. Somebody out there has a Monica in their life and doesn't even know it yet. And somebody out there needs to be reminded that the truth, no matter how deep it gets buried, always finds its way to the surface before we close. Let's talk about what this story actually means. Because every story worth telling has something underneath it. Something true. The first thing Zora's story teaches us is this: discernment is not the same as distrust. Zora was not wrong for wanting a friend. She was not wrong for being lonely. She was not wrong for opening her heart. That is not a weakness, that is humanity. The lesson is not trust no one. The lesson is pay attention. Listen to the quiet alarm bell that rings when something isn't right. Zora's mother told her on that phone call, not everyone who smiles at you is smiling for you. That was wisdom. And the cost of ignoring wisdom, even once, can be enormous. The second thing this story teaches us is that jealousy is one of the most dangerous things a person can carry. Monica Price wasn't evil for the sake of being evil. She was a person who had been told her whole life that her value lived in being the best. And when someone came along who was genuinely better, someone who had earned it honestly, with nothing but sacrifice and discipline, Monica couldn't reckon with it. She couldn't grow from it. She could only try to destroy it. That is what happens when ego is the foundation of a person's identity. When the foundation cracks, the whole building falls. And it takes everyone nearby down with it. Remember, a real friend celebrates your light. A fake friend studies it so they can figure out how to put it out. Know the difference. Protect yourself without closing yourself off. Open your heart, but keep your eyes open too. And never ever let anyone convince you that what you earned with your own hands wasn't earned. Zora knew who she was. And in the end, that was all she needed. Go be Zora.